So how do you go about getting this passed? RFCs, lots and lots of RFCs. So the first time this was proposed was in 2021. We got about 65% support, but it did not pass. However, I got a sense that the community wanted to at least try it, so I proposed it again in 2024. This time I got about 83% and it passed, and we knew for sure that the community wanted to try this. The first election, we were authorized for one trial election. Now we have the authorization, but now we needed to find people to do the work. So luckily some people stepped up and we started doing the work. I stepped into kind of a project manager role. Someone needs to create the RFCs on the big issues, kind of make decisions for the small issues, set some dates and stick to them, and talk to the various stakeholders. This is a complex process. There were other people involved. The WMF was doing secure poll, vote wiki type stuff. Stewards were scrutineering our votes, which is where you double check the votes for sock puppets. The first election had 32 candidates, which is an amazing turnout. That's like in a typical year lately, 32 candidates for RFA would be a lot over the year. So to get all that in one election was really exciting. We had about 600 votes cast, and we elected 11 admins, and the feedback was mostly positive. Congratulations to our first batch of administrators from Administrator Elections. During the debrief, we figured out exactly what people liked about Administrator Elections. They said that there was less feedback to propose because people weren't posting as much on the discussion pages. Less feedback to process, sorry. Less negative feedback because they were saving that for their secret votes. They weren't putting that necessarily publicly. You were running with dozens of other candidates, takes the spotlight off. We had an exact date for it. So instead of it being open-ended, like, oh, maybe I'll run someday, they were like, okay, July 2024 is coming up. I got to make a decision. Do I run? And then the nominators, that also rallied nominators, they would get together and they'd be like, all right, who should we offer to nominate? And that would help spur people to run as well. And then some other advantages, shorter discussion period. It was only 5 days, and I think even less than that in the first election when RFA, the old process, normally had a 7-day discussion. And then finally, there was no risk of a bureaucrat chat, which would, if you had 65 to 75% in the old process, then you'd basically have to have a second RFA where the bureaucrats discussed you, and it was open-ended, and it just kind of elongated the process and added some stress. All right, so the first election went well. We have a good process now. Got to refine it a little bit and then get permission to do it again. So the first step is to make the process better. So we had our RFC workshop. People were able to propose ideas of little things to change, and then we RFC'd all of that. And then finally, we were ready for one big RFC to renew everything. The idea was we wanted to get the process as good as possible, fix everything, and then RFC for permanent renewal. Some things we RFC'd in the workshop included just little things like pass percentage, voter guides, minimum number of support votes, just all the little details. The result of the renewal RFC, we had 3 choices: either don't renew it for another trial, or renew it permanently until canceled or whatever by a different RFC. And the result was renew permanently. So the community seems to really like this. It seems to be working, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the conclusion. So let's talk about, okay, so the next roadblock was we were able to have elections about once a year because we had global partners, and you know, elections aren't their main thing. They're busy with other stuff. So they said that they had the bandwidth to do it about once a year, but we found out in our RFCs that our community wanted to do it about once every 5 months. So how do we fix that? How do we have admin elections more often? We make it more local is what we do. Instead of having to ask favors from our global partners, we start making it so the software can be installed locally so that we're using local personnel, stuff like that. So the plan, change the election clerk, the person that makes the poll and secure poll, change that to be local. The scrutineers, the people that double check all the votes for anything suspicious, double voting, stuff like that, make them local, and then finally change the poll location from vote.wikimedia.org to our local wiki so that we can just ourselves click the button and create the poll. As part of this, we created a new user group on NWiki called Election Clerk, and then we also wrote software patches so that we could install extension secure poll locally. Technical volunteers such as SD0001 and myself worked together We both had enough access to write patches and approve patches for secure poll. So we worked together and as a team, and we got a lot of patches through. We fixed a lot of small bugs in secure poll. We added some little improvements. And the biggest one, secure poll can now be installed locally on any wiki that wants it. WMF has been a great partner in all this. They've been very supportive. Secure poll used to be unstewarded. They didn't really have a team assigned to it. After discussions and all this, it looks like they put trust and safety product team in charge of it, which was really helpful, because then they were also working on some patches and approving patches and stuff like that. And we even worked together with them at a conference, the technical conference, the Wikimedia Hackathon. So that was great. Great example of Wikimedia Foundation and volunteers working together. Now we're at the second election. We've fixed all the roadblocks to having it every 5 months, and now we're ready to do the second election. We had 16 candidates, about 500 votes cast, and 9 admins elected. The turnout of candidates was a little lower than the first A-elect, but that's still a lot of candidates. Considering the first part of this year, I think we only had 5 RFAs, the old process. Here's who got elected. Yay, go admins. Now, the big question, did this work? Is this helping? Did A-elect increase the number of admins? Why, yes. Yes, it did. Look at this chart. This is fantastic data. You can clearly see that in 2009 was like the glory days, and then it's just continually declining and leveling off, and then all of a sudden in 2024, it starts jumping up again. The biggest jump in like a decade. So I'm really excited about this data. I think it is working. In fact, the data suggests that A-elect might currently be more popular than RFA. Because like I said, we only had, I think, 5 RFAs in the first part of this year, and A-elect, we had 16 candidates. So that's really interesting. The dynamics are changing. People are experimenting with the process, and with a couple more elections, we'll be able to see exactly how people feel about it. Thank you to everybody that's helped. This is a complex process, and a lot of help went into it. RFC closers, software engineers, everybody. So thanks for that. And back to Soni.
So, we have been through the 2 processes that we talked about and all the other processes that we were trying. What did we learn from this? There has been many RFA reform proposals over the years, but the one big change this time is that we had trials. We had trials that we had, and when they did not work out, we just said no. There were proposals that were imperfect, they still have flaws, but they improved things. So perfection is no longer a prerequisite in the process right now. Secondly, perennial is not forever. Proposals that have been suggested over and over for 20 years, they are being actually implemented right now. The community is evolving, there's a new generation of editors, and hopefully we can try more things. And finally, having project managers is helpful. We learned that making RFCs is really hard. Not everybody will know everything that is going on, and having somebody who is decisive on the small things, and RFC is the big thing so that the community still has the main say over it, is great. So, the big question, was this a good thing? Was RFA 24 a good thing? I think yes, it was great.
I think yes as well, specifically because of administrator elections and monitors. Those were 2 big proposals that passed that were helpful.
Yeah. Was recall a good thing? Maybe. I think it has been great. I think it has tackled a few problems that have been very hard so far. And I think it can still be improved.